There is one sentence in the book of Genesis that has stopped more readers in their tracks than almost any other line in the entire Bible. It's not a plague. It's not a flood. It's 7 words tucked into a single verse. And once you notice it, you can't unsee it. Cain knew his wife, and she conceived. Wait, a wife? Up to this point in the story, the Bible has only introduced us to 4 people: Adam, Eve, Cain, Abel. And Abel is already dead, lying in a field with his own brother's fingerprints on the crime. So who exactly did Cain marry? And it gets stranger before it gets clearer. When God confronts Cain about the murder, Cain doesn't beg for mercy from God. He panics about something else entirely. He says, "Whoever finds me will kill me." Whoever. Who is out there? A few sentences later, this exiled murderer builds an entire city. Not a tent, not a hut, a city with a name built for his son. A city needs people. Where did they come from? Skeptics love this passage. They treat it like a loose thread that, if you pull it hard enough, unravels the whole book. But here's the thing nobody tells you when they bring this question up at a dinner table or in a comment section. Genesis already gives you the answer. It's just sitting 1 chapter later, in a verse most people skim right past without even blinking. So let's actually slow down and read the text the way it was written, instead of the way pop culture likes to quote it out of context. Start with the timeline, because the timeline is where this whole mystery quietly falls apart. Most people picture Cain and Abel as 2 young men in their 20s, fresh out of childhood, alone on a mostly empty planet. But Genesis never says that. In fact, Genesis chapter 5 tells us that Adam was 130 years old when his son Seth was born, and Seth was given to Eve specifically as a replacement for Abel. That means Abel's death happened sometime before Adam turned 130. Do the math on that for a second. That's over a century of a fertile, commanded to multiply couple having children before the murder even took place. Not 2 sons, not 3. The text plainly states in Genesis chapter 5, verse 4, that Adam had other sons and daughters. Plural. Unnamed, uncounted. And Adam didn't stop there. He lived to be 930 years old. Picture what that actually means biologically. A household with that kind of lifespan, commanded by God to be fruitful and multiply, isn't producing 3 children and calling it done. By the time Cain is wandering into the land of Nod, there could easily have been dozens, maybe hundreds of Adam and Eve's own descendants scattered across the region. Cain wasn't walking into an empty world. He was walking into his own extended family, a family that had already had a century or more to grow. That solves all 3 mysteries at once, and it does it with a single verse the text was already holding. Who did Cain marry? A sister, or more likely, given the timeline, a niece from that first sprawling generation. Who was Cain afraid would kill him? Brothers, cousins, and relatives who had heard exactly what he did to Abel and had every motive for vengeance. Who filled his city? The same expanding family line, generation stacking on generation, while Adam and Eve were both still very much alive to see it happen. Now, I know exactly what some of you are already thinking, because it's the first objection everyone raises the moment they hear sister. Isn't that incest? Isn't that exactly what the Bible condemns? It is condemned. Later. In Leviticus, God draws a hard, permanent line against marrying close relatives. But here's the detail that changes everything. Leviticus was written roughly 2,500 years after Eden. The prohibition didn't exist yet, because the reason for the prohibition didn't exist yet. Genetic mutations build up over generations, the same way a photocopy of a photocopy slowly loses quality. Adam and Eve's original genetic code, fresh from creation, carried none of that accumulated damage. Their children marrying each other in that first generation didn't carry the same risk it would carry today, precisely because the risk itself hadn't developed yet. Even Scripture shows this play out gradually and honestly. Abraham marries his half-sister. Isaac marries close family. Jacob marries his cousins. By the time Moses arrives, the boundary widens all the way out, and God finally seals it in the law, right when the biological reality caught up and made it necessary. God didn't forget to mention a rule. He introduced it exactly when it mattered. There's a second detail worth sitting with, because it's easy to read past. Eve's very name makes a claim out loud. Genesis says Adam named her Eve because she would become the mother of all the living. Not some of the living, not most of the living, all of the living. Every single human life the Bible ever tracks runs back through one woman. That's not a throwaway line. Centuries later, the Apostle Paul builds an entire theological argument on this exact point, that sin entered the world through one man, and death spread to everyone because everyone descended from him. Jesus himself, when questioned about marriage, reaches all the way back to this same original couple as the pattern for everyone who comes after. The unity of the human race isn't a side note in the Bible. It's load-bearing. Pull it out, and you're not just changing a footnote in Genesis, you're touching the foundation of what the rest of Scripture is built on. So when you put the pieces together, the mystery isn't really a mystery at all. It's a puzzle that only looks unsolvable if you assume Genesis is trying to give you a complete census of the ancient world in 4 verses. It isn't. It's telling you the parts of the story that matter for where the narrative is going next, and trusting you to notice the one line, 1 chapter later, that fills in the rest. Adam and Eve had other sons and daughters. That's it. That's the answer skeptics have been arguing over for 2,000 years, sitting in plain sight the entire time. But here's what I find far more interesting than the wife question itself. Genesis doesn't just answer where Cain's family came from. It shows you 2 families growing up side by side, making completely opposite choices with the same amount of time and the same set of options. Cain's line built fast. They built cities, invented music, forged the first metal tools, and moved civilization forward at a breathtaking pace. And Genesis is honest enough to tell you that all of it was built outside God's presence. Meanwhile, Seth's line isn't remembered for any of that. Genesis simply says that in his generation, people began to call on the name of the Lord. 2 families, 2 directions. One that built an empire without God, one that built a quiet relationship with him. And when you know how the story ends, with a flood that erases every wall, every song, every forge that Cain's line ever built, you start to realize the question was never really about where a wife came from. It was about which kind of life actually lasts. So maybe that's the real question worth taking home today. Not where did Cain get his wife, but which one of these 2 lines are you building? If this helped the story make more sense, stay with us, because Genesis has a lot more of these moments hiding in plain sight. Hit subscribe, and let's keep going through it together.